Give me 35 minutes and you'll stop thinking thoughts are yours. What happens when you stop thinking thoughts are yours? What happens when you stop thinking that your own thoughts are yours? That's the one question that's been appearing for me over this past week. And for me, the question is so profound because tonight we seek its answer live. At a point, we have to start asking, what is the nature of thinking? What is the nature of thought? Why do we even care about this question? The reason is because without thought, the human mind cannot know suffering. Without thinking of the past or imagining the future or worrying about the present, there could be no suffering, which means if we were to understand the mechanism of thought, if we were to pick thought apart, find out what it is and who sent it, could we discover the most powerful means of transforming ourselves and transforming our minds? Folks, in tonight's experiment, we seek the answer to the question most have never asked. What happens when you stop thinking thoughts are yours? Without further ado, we need to get to tonight's show because this conversation started from a clip that I want to show you. Something profound. And for me, it just got me thinking like, if we can it's not enough to just be a neuroscientist. It's not enough to just be somebody who's read a bunch of books about the subject. I'm saying I want to know from my primary experience, what is the makeup and nature of my thinking? And is it possible? Is it possible that were I to see thought as its own organism, what happens to the way that I interface or interrelate with myself and the world? Folks, if you're ready to live free beyond fear, welcome here. I'm Dr. Shawn, and I believe you do not need years to heal. You just need one real breakthrough. That's why I invented Transcendent Psychology, and I test it in the real world, on real people, on my game show, Countdown to Breakthrough, the only game show that heals your soul. We are interrogating this line of thinking that was sparked in me from the clip I'm about to show you. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and jump to the clip because that's going to set up our conversation for the evening.
And this is where, it starts to get a little bit disturbing. Language is an autonomous informational system, one may even call it an organism, and it runs in our brains. It's downloaded against your will.
By the time you're reading the waiver, it's too late. What makes you think your thoughts are your own? According to groundbreaking work by professors Elon Barinholtz and William Hahn, every word you speak comes from an alien intelligence that installed itself in your brain during infancy. Language, they argue, is an organism that uses human minds as its substrate. Elon Barinholtz was interviewed before on this channel, and it went viral. Link is in the description. Professor Barinholtz contends that our linguistic system operates on meaningless squiggles, with no access to the rich sensory world of experience. He believes that LLMs can master language, but never feel pain, for instance. Professor William Hahn, on the other hand, who's also been interviewed and it went viral, link is in the description, extends this to virtual machines and software layers. Professor Hahn thinks that consciousness is just one of many programs running in parallel. I was invited to moderate this panel live at the University of Toronto with this event organized by Echo Lopto. Again, link.
Okay, so they're about to go into it. But the point is that I found that to be so fascinating. Now, what they start talking about consciousness and these different, it would be interesting to see what they come up with. For our purposes today, I'm more interested in this question of what if your thoughts are not your own? Where would they have to come from? Which gets us to a question of what is the nature of thinking. So I go into deep meditation over the past week. And this conversation is a conversation. I know it seems like it's everyone I feel like feels like they have their own answer, but truly you would need thousands of hours of meditation, thousands of hours of sitting at the altar of yourself and watching. I'm only interested in them type of answers. I'm not interested in the intellectual, you know what I'm saying? However fascinating they are, I'm interested in the very question of where do our thoughts come from? What is the nature of thinking? And if our thoughts define our reality, what if your thoughts aren't even yours? Ooh, as you can expect, this gets us to the heart of identity, the heart of the self. And so tonight, I'm for real looking to investigate this question, but we can only investigate it by actually looking within ourselves. So that's where we'll be going. Notice the connection with language. This researcher is saying that language itself is like an alien substance that is being programmed. And language and thought, they go together. If you remember back to your freshman college courses, you might remember something called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. That idea that language constructs reality. You could also say that thought constructs reality. Language and thinking, they go together. And so this person posited that language itself is extraterrestrial. I said, oh, that's so fascinating. I don't care what's right. I care about what we can do with what has been said. I don't care about if it's accurate. I care about that energy, that impulse that gets us to ask a new question and therefore arrive at a new answer. So I got to take you to something that I call, I guess I'm calling it the breakthrough binder. Okay, so watch this. Literally, this binder right here is chock full of straight up downloads. Every time, I'll see if I can, and I got a whole bunch of notebooks that are super full, just like this, right? Every time that consciousness, that spirit gives me an insight, I write it down. It'd be 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, often it is 4 in the morning, often it is. And in the middle of the night, I'll get up and start scratching out the insight, because these insights become the base layer of every single thing that I do in terms of transcendent psychology, right? So it becomes a book, it becomes the new love book, it becomes spiritual responsibility, it becomes these different books. And I'm always surprised by what is being said. And so what I want to do is I want to take you through just a few of these entries, because since we last talked, since last week, Sublime is in the room, a commonplace book. Okay, I'm seeing folks coming through saying good evening, good evening. Sublime, good evening. Ferrer, yo, put your names in the chat so I can shout you out for real, for real. Twin is in the room. Welcome in, welcome in. We have other Twin in the room. Felicity's in the room. Good evening, good evening. Okay. So I started getting into this, right? I started thinking like, what if our thinking is not our own? Right? You have a thought and you get the sense that, well, because it is a memory of of your own life, that it must belong to you, that you must have been the one to think it. So it feels personal to you. So therefore we automatically assume, oh, of course, this is my private thought. That person is not aware of my private thought. Therefore, this thought must have been birthed by me. Uh, it's the kind of thing that's so obvious that you would almost never say, like why would you ever say anything against the very concept, right? I mean, I talk about spiritual responsibility, taking full ownership over everything that is in your experience. So what would it mean then? And I'm really for real. Like we for real about to get to the bottom of this tonight. I do not know the answer, but we about to look. Oh yes. Oh yes. So I get into this meditation, right? And I go in and it's the basic meditation. I've been meditating for 16 years and formally, and throughout that time, right, 16 years, couple hours a day, that's 10,000 hours, you feel me? And so it's kind of like, but it takes that in order just to look and see what the nature of existence is, or I need to be able to see it from what we call phenomenological perspective, which is to say that I want to see it from the perspective of my actual lived experience. The science on the situation changes all of the time. It'll always be in flux. There'll always be new data, new variables, I can't wait for all that. I need to know right now, what is the nature of my thoughts? So I get to it, right? And so this one is from January 8th. I guess it would have been about 2 weeks ago that it started, where I saw this video. Then last week we of course had Janelle on, but this week I'm kind of getting back to it. And just last night I was finishing up some things, and so one thing that I started noticing is that negative thoughts seem to arise from a subtle disagreement with reality. That one question started getting me deeper and deeper. I'm like, oh, so where are the thoughts coming from anyway? Like, if were I just to sit and look and stare, where are the thoughts coming from anyway? What even is thinking? And what does the capacity for thought tell me about the nature of reality? Hmm. Tanya's in the building. Welcome in, Tanya. Okay, excellent, excellent. So I started writing something. I started preparing this thing for you. Let's go to it. Because what I'm thinking about is the 5 levels of thinking. This is the place where I started seeing that, okay, there seems to be 5 levels to thinking, 5 levels of thinking. You feel me? As I'm sitting here just deep in meditation, I'm just watching how thoughts arise, how they fall, that sort of thing. You dig what I'm saying? But at a point, you can see a thought coming, you can feel it kind of, pop out on you. But at some point, you start saying, but where did you come from? Out of what substance did you arise? Out of what substance? So I start looking, right? I get to peeking. I start noticing there are 5 levels of thought, or we might call it 5 levels of thinking. I want to share those with you right now. This is not the point of the show, but it's certainly my starting point. Here we go. Level 1 is no thought. That's pure presence. So you can think of this as the space in between thinking, or just when you're completely in the zone, right? There's no thoughts, there's no thinking, because there's no your awareness is completely absorbed in the moment. You only have what is in your immediate perception. It's just your lived experience without any thought at all. Just being in the here and now. Okay. Level 1 is no thought. So we call it getting back to 1, right? But then we have level 2. This is focused presence, but then there starts to be this static noise. So if you get into your deep meditation, what you'll see is that, yeah, you're present, and there's just the darkness behind your eyes, and there's nothing else. And all of a sudden, there will be these movements. It'll be just these slight images, these noises, these sounds, these words, but they're all just complete memories or formulations, patterns, stimuli that you have observed during your day that are now recycling back through your waking consciousness. I call these static noise type thoughts. You don't really, most people don't even notice that they're there. But if you could imagine these sort of piecemeal, these like these little thoughts, they kind of collect and gather together until they start forming larger pictures in the mind. Fascinating. Okay, so then we get to level 3. This is coming completely out of my own session. From that static noise type of thought, that's when our agreements and disagreements with reality can happen. Now we start getting into what's called discursive thought. That's just thinking in language, thinking with words. This discursive thought, now we're talking to ourselves, talking about what we got to do today, what's going to happen tomorrow. You feel me? And as we continue to do that, then we start getting into what I call phenomenal reliving. This is thinking with all of the senses. So now it's not just you sitting here talking to yourself, it's you back in the past or trying to project yourself into the future, where you literally project yourself into a situation where you are taking on the sights, the sounds, the tastes, the hearing. You are fully 3-dimensionally inside of this new environment. You're thinking about what you got to do tomorrow. You're thinking about you have to go to the grocery store. Now you're placing yourself in the store, and you're thinking, oh man, I hope I don't have to see Sally on the way. I hope I don't come out my house and see the neighbor, because she might, whatever. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you're putting yourself into this I noticed for me, I'm putting myself into this three-dimensional experience of either past or future. I'm either reliving something or I'm in the future somewhere. This is the fourth level of thought. So now we're beyond just thinking about and thinking in language, beyond talking to myself, I'm literally reliving either a future moment, or sorry, a past moment, or I'm projecting myself into a future moment. Okay. But it's three-dimensional. It's thinking with all of the senses. You'll find that this is the place where all of the anxiety comes from. Because to the person who is at the fourth level of thinking, their body is still in the present, but their thoughts, their minds are in a whole different, are taking up attention, and they're in a whole different environment, one that is not here. Okay, so we have this phenomenal reliving, typically of the past, but it can also be a reliving of an imagined future. Then we get to level 5. These runway thoughts, this is where we have the arising of runway thoughts that give way to other thoughts. Right? Thinking itself works by association. In human beings, when we think of something, we're thinking always in association with something else. So when we have a thought about whatever we have to do today, one thing that the mind can do is immediately register back, associate back to the last time we did that very thing. How did it go? Were we successful? Were we embarrassed? Did we get upset? Did we win? Did we fail? Did we lose something? You dig what I'm saying? We start associating back to a former time, a former moment. This is all important because once we can see that a runway thought is starting to germinate, it's starting to spread to other sections of our mind, it's starting to produce, give birth to thoughts of a similar nature. You think about one situation that you're really ambivalent about, you really don't want to even go into the office tomorrow or whatever the case is, and that feeling of anxiety associates back to your own childhood. You start thinking about a time that you were hurt decades ago. All inside of we're talking seconds. We're talking microseconds of flipping through these experiences. And once you're at the stage of phenomenal reliving, the problem is that you're now actually feeling it. You're now reliving, refilling the situation in the first place. So we call that basically living in the phantom zone, right? Where you're revisiting the phantoms of the past or the ghosts of the future, and you're actually feeling what it's like to experience these emotions all over again, as if the situations that you're facing are real and appearing here and now. Because from the perspective of your attention, which is focused on these thoughts, you are reliving this experience in the here and now. You are anxious all over again. You dig what I'm saying? So as I'm sitting here thinking about this, I'm like, okay, so these are like the 5 levels of thought. And none of these need to be a problem. You can have presence at every step, or you can be lost at every step. In other words, you can step back and observe the static noise, observe the discursive thought, observe phenomenal reliving, and not really be too caught up in it. But that kind of thing takes practice. And to the point that I want to get at tonight is, what is the nature of this thinking in the first place? Where are these thoughts even coming from? So what happens when you stop thinking thoughts are yours? What happens when I stop thinking that thoughts are mine? Ah, there were two things. I started feeling, one, the sense of maturity return, the sense of separation, and then the sense of unification. Those are kind of the twin poles, the separation from the thinking itself, but then this unification, this idea that the watcher, it's not quite appropriate to say that you stop thinking that the thoughts are yours. It's more like you stop thinking that the thoughts are exclusive to you, right? The thoughts themselves are made out of the same substance that you are made out of, but they are like, it would be like the ocean being upset at a wave. The wave is gone too soon for you to care, and also the wave is also made out of you, but does not define you. You feel me? So it's like this separation plus plus unification. I still felt that love was there. I still felt that love was available to send to the thoughts themselves, and in so doing, the thoughts, they became like happy critters. Even the worst thoughts, I'm talking about the worst fears, you know what I'm saying? When I said, hey, look, to think of that thought of the worst fear, for real, you bring that thing in, and then this love is still available. One, there's separation, so I feel cool. I don't feel like I'm threatened at all because it's just a thought. But then I understand that this greater love is actually available. So when I send the love to the thought, all of a sudden, now the thought isn't even, I no longer have a opinion about it. There's not even a disagreement with its existence. There's no longer a disagreement even with its existence, even when it's a thought that I don't care about. Or I'm sorry, a thought that I prefer not to have, even if it's a worse fear. So I see this twin pole of separation that bursts this unification, this unity. The unity, of course, is that love experience where I can welcome the thought because I know that it wasn't going to hurt me anyway. But whatever it is, it's almost like the love is honoring the substance out of which thought is made in the first place. Whatever that liminal state is that these thoughts appear in, that they seem to pop out of nowhere. You call it the fifth dimension, the sixth dimension, the seventh dimension. It must be connected with us in the here and now, and therefore a part of us, and therefore worth loving. And maybe that's the principle for tonight, which is that when you say, okay, what happens when you stop thinking thoughts are yours, the immediate realization, or immediate, I mean, we took some time to get there, but the thing that's appearing for me right now is that all of you is worth loving. You see that all of you is worth loving, that the very substance out of which thoughts are made, they do not define you. The thoughts do not define you, but they do not control you, but they do arise from this common source, the very source that is common to all experience. Right? That watcher is aware of a thought in the same way that it's aware of the taste of tea. That watcher is aware of the worst fears in the same way that it's aware of the people you love the most in the world. It's a common substance. And so no matter if we talk in 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, 5 dimensions, 6 dimensions, 8 dimensions, no matter how far we go in reality, no matter how much more we learn, we find that this common substance out of which all things appear is definitely connected to me, is definitely connected to you, which means that they are a part of you. And what I'm saying is that the principle of the evening is that all of you is worth loving. This is the recognition that appears when you stop thinking thoughts are yours. That the thoughts, yes, they come and go, but they are made of a substance that is not separate from yourself. The thoughts have no dominion over that substance. They do not determine what is ultimate reality. But to reject a thought is, in a way, to reject a portion of yourself. And so there's no need for all of that. One thing that we learn from the watcher is that we get this separation. I don't need to follow thoughts wholesale. I don't need to do, you know what I'm saying? I don't, the watcher is seeing the thoughts. The thoughts do not belong to the watcher as if they are jewelry or offspring. That's not what I mean. The thoughts simply appear, but in appearing, they enter into a reality that is you, that is made up of you, this watcher, you, this awareness. If that watcher disappears, all of reality disappears. When that watcher is here, all of reality can be experienced, which means that the watcher and reality are one, since they go together. And if they're one, then that means they're also you. And if they're you, then all of you is worth loving. You understand? That's the principle of the evening. That's the principle of the evening. If we can remember that, thoughts are literally like waves in the ocean. They come, they go, but they are sharing a common substance with the ultimate, with the totality of the ocean itself is represented. A portion of it is represented in each wave. There would be no wave if there weren't that ocean. So what it look like if the ocean is fighting the waves? That's crazy. That is to create a schism, a gap within yourself. And there you go. There's our pattern for the evening. We say, okay, what's the pattern? Why do we get into trouble in the first place? The pattern is that in looking to fight, reject, get rid of thoughts, any thought, you are going to war with yourself. Let me put the pattern up here. The pattern, the reason we get into trouble in the first place, the reason that suffering can happen in the first place. Here we go. This is the pattern. Once I understand the pattern of something, I can recognize it. Once I can recognize it, now I can deal with it. You feel me? So the principle tonight was that all of you is worth loving, which is to say that thoughts are a part of you. That's what happens when you stop thinking thoughts are yours, is that you start seeing that they don't belong to you, but that they are still a part of experience. And that experience is only possible because of you, which means that experience and yourself are one. So, in other words, to reject a thought is to subtly reject a part of yourself, not in the micro, but in the macro. So the pattern is this: to fight any thought is to go to war with yourself. Now, isn't that interesting? We started with the question, what happens when you stop thinking thoughts are yours, and we start finding that, wait, thoughts, they are not mine, as in to hold. If they were mine, that means they would be separate from me. If they were mine, that means they would be something that belonged to me, something external that belonged to me, or something that I created that I could lose. Rather than understanding that thoughts are connected with the totality of existence, and that if I want to end the war with thoughts, if I want to actually end my suffering, that I must end the war with thoughts. So it is not that the thoughts belong to me, it is that they are a part of the common substance that is me. There's no separation, which means there's no sense in fighting. The watcher is able to create a level of distance, but that distance is allowing the watcher to detach. Having detached from thinking, I can now recognize what the very substance of all thought is, and recognize that as thoughts come and go, the substance that is common to all thought outlast all thought, and therefore is unaffected by all thought. That substance is myself. And so this gets us to the path. Once I understand that reality and myself go together, that the thoughts that I was formerly fighting against belong to a sacred substance that requires no fight. All of a sudden, I can break this pattern. The pattern being that if I fight with any thought, I go to war with myself. I go to war with the common substance. Why would I do that? Why would I do that? I want to make sure that's clear. The thoughts are not mine, but the substance out of which all thoughts arise is myself. And because myself outlasts all thoughts, I don't need to fight a thought. It can't stay anyway. But another power opens up, and that is this ability to love the substance, the common substance, recognize the common substance out of which all of reality, including thoughts, is made, and thereby end the war that I'm having with thoughts in the first place, end the disagreement with reality. When we say we're having a thought that is causing suffering, basically we're saying one thing: I don't like what's going on here. And as long as we believe that thought, I don't like what's going on here, something needs to change. As long as we're believing that thought, we're trying to fight that thought, we're creating a fragment. We're fragmenting ourselves, going to war with ourselves. However, when I can recognize that there is one in me that is beyond all thinking, but instead that all thinking arises in, then I can honor thought for the sacred act that it is without having to fight against it. You dig what I'm saying? So the principle was that all of you is worth loving, including your thoughts, including the substance out of which all your thoughts are made. It is not that thoughts belong to you, but it is that thoughts belong to the common substance that is you. They are a part of you. Again, ocean and wave. But because the thought itself is destined to come and go, there is no need to enter into that old pattern of fighting against thoughts and going to war with yourself. Again, the ocean that fights against the wave is at war with itself. So now we need to know the path forward. The principle was that all of you is worth loving. The entire ocean of you is worth loving, including the waves. The pattern was that, like the ocean fighting against the waves, if you decide that you want to fight against thoughts, you are at war with yourself. So now we need the path forward. We need the way to know, okay, how do I stay clear? How do I create that separation, that distance, so that I can remember this greater unification, this greater common substance? How can I do that at a moment's notice? Remember the silent watcher. This is our path forward. Remember the silent watcher. If instead of thinking about the thought, I want to think about the one who never thinks, I just want to remember the one who never thinks, the one that is constantly aware. Once I'm remembering the one that never thinks, then by definition, the thoughts no longer, I've created that separation immediately. The thoughts are no longer mine, but a greater recognition opens up in that very moment, which is that the thoughts are no longer mine, but there is a common substance that is me. And I notice that all thoughts arise out of that, which means that as long as I love the substance, and the substance itself is love, as long as I can recognize this common substance, there's never a need for me to go to war with thoughts. The thoughts must come and go, but the watcher remains. And the substance, this awareness, we say awareness is the substance, this awareness, which is the watcher, which births thoughts naturally but does not hold on to them, just like the ocean births waves naturally but does not hold on to them. The watcher has no need to ever go to war with negative thoughts or with any thought, which means that this watcher, this awareness, this love becomes salvation itself, the end of all suffering. Because suffering can only be known once I'm ruminating, once I'm thinking, once I'm back at that sense of, I don't like what's going on here, this needs to stop. Once I'm at war with myself, that's when suffering begins. Once I'm at war with thought, that's when I'm at war with myself, that's when suffering begins. However, if I'm able to remember the silent watcher and simply be aware of the thought, for me, I notice within 3 seconds, at least within 3 seconds, the emotion, the fear, the trepidation, all that just falls away. What happens when you stop thinking thoughts are yours? You remember that all is you. Let me say that again. What happens when you stop thinking thoughts are yours? You remember that all is you, which means that all of you is worth loving, which means that the pattern of going to war with yourself can end because you have remembered the source. You have remembered the silent watcher, the one that sees all thoughts come and all thoughts go, but is not moved. The silent watcher is not coming and going. And that silent watcher, from its presence, we begin to detect this higher frequency, this frequency of love moving through. And we can take that frequency of love and we can actually spread it to the thoughts. This is what it means when we get at this principle of all of you is worth loving. That the thoughts are not garbage. They're not trash. They're just bits of you trying to get attention. They do not belong to you, but they belong to the substance that is you. So you can both, just as the ocean and the wave, you can give birth to this wave as the ocean without going to war with the wave. You can watch the birth of this thought as this ocean of awareness without getting involved or going to war with the wave of thought. Somebody let me know you understand.